Peter and the Pocket Guide to Hunting Vampires and Other Demon-like Creatures. Episode 4. Perfect Strangers by Rich von Halt. The night shrouded the open field in a veil of darkness, broken only by the harsh glare of the 1988 Cadillac Broughams headlights. Peter, his tank top and khakis caked with grime, struggled to keep his heavy eyelids from drooping as he shoveled dirt over his head, his movements sluggish with exhaustion. Across from him, Pete dug with mechanical efficiency, his face set in a grim mask of determination. They stood in a pit 6 feet deep, 6 feet long, and 6 feet wide, a gaping wound in the earth waiting to be filled with the gruesome remains of the night's work. Dominic, cigarette dangling from his lips, ferried lifeless bodies from the car's trunk to the edge of the pit, stacking them in a macabre pile for Niccolo and Sergio to dismember and toss into the waiting grave. Sergio hurled a severed limb into the pit, the bloody appendage striking Peter's leg with a sickening thud. Peter winced, a sharp gasp escaping his lips. Ouch! Sergio's eyes, cold and unforgiving, bore into Peter, a silent warning etched in their depths. Peter swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. Sorry. He turned back to his task, the shovel biting into the earth with renewed urgency. Dominic appeared at the edge of the pit, a fresh cigarette glowing between his fingers. He took a deep drag, the embers casting an eerie orange glow across his face. Okay, boys, that's the last of them. Pete vaulted out of the pit with practiced ease, turning to extend a hand to Peter. Come on, Peter. Peter glanced up, meeting the expectant gazes of Pete and the others. With a nod, he handed the shovel to Pete and grasped his outstretched hand, hauling himself out of the macabre grave they had dug. The weight of the night's deeds hung heavy on his shoulders as he stumbled to his feet, the stench of death clinging to his skin like a shroud. In the stillness of the night, Peter thrashed beneath the tangled sheets, his eyes clenched shut as a kaleidoscope of haunting images flickered through his mind. His hands trembled, a fear more profound than any beating he had endured gripping his soul. As he stumbled to his feet, Boris loomed before him, their faces mere inches apart. Peter's gaze fixated on Boris's fanged teeth, a stark contrast to the stern, penetrating eyes that bored into his own. The scene shifted, and Peter found himself dropping to the ground beside his father's lifeless body. Cradling his head in his hands, Peter wept, his fingers desperately pressing against his father's neck in a futile attempt to stem the crimson tide that soaked through his clothes. In the solitude of his room, Peter's fingers probed his own neck, searching for any sign of the nightmare that had consumed him. Sandor's sinister smile, fangs glinting in the dim light, greeted Peter as he opened the door to the main cavern. Inside, hundreds of bodies swayed and writhed to an unheard rhythm, their humanity lost in the primal dance. A giant blue dumpster appeared, and Sergio rummaged through a white bag, retrieving 4 sets of car keys. As he tossed them to Peter, one set clattered to the ground. Bending to retrieve them, Peter's gaze fell upon a leg adorned with a red high heel, a macabre detail amidst the chaos. Dominic approached, shovels in hand, tossing one to each of them with a grim sense of purpose. In the rearview mirror, Peter watched as Niccolo stared at him, an axe gripped tightly in his hands as he climbed into the waiting car. Dasco's piercing gaze burned into Peter's soul, a silent accusation that lingered long after the dream had faded. With a violent start, Peter jolted awake, his chest heaving as he gasped for air. Mom rushed into the room, concern etched on her face. Peter, are you okay? She asked, perching on the edge of his bed. Was it a nightmare? Peter struggled to focus, his body drenched in sweat. Oh, Peter, you're all sweaty. I'll go get you some water, Mom said, rising to leave. Mom, I don't need water, Peter protested, sitting up and swinging his legs over the side of the bed. Mom returned, glass in hand. Here, Petey. Here's some water. Mom, I said I don't want water, Peter snapped, his frustration boiling over. Mom sat beside him, her voice gentle. What's wrong, Petey? I had a bad dream, okay? You don't need to storm in like I'm a kid. Petey! Mom! Peter sighed, his shoulders sagging. I'm going to go back to bed. He lay down, turning his back to her. Mom rose slowly, hurt evident in her eyes. Okay, Peter, I'll leave the water on your desk. No, take it with you, Peter growled. Ignoring his request, Mom set the glass on the dresser and exited the room, shutting the door behind her. Peter rolled over, his gaze fixed on the unwanted glass of water, a silent reminder of the horrors that haunted his dreams and the growing distance between him and those he loved. Peter sat in the middle of the bus, his red and white Hawaiian shirt a stark contrast to the drab interior. Khaki pants completed his look, but his attention was focused solely on the book in his hands, the pocket guide to hunting vampires and other demon-like creatures. He flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the text with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. A passage caught his eye. Vampires originated in Eastern Europe, mainly descendants of Slavic people, possibly that of the Balkan population of Serbo-Croats. Peter skimmed further, turning pages until he reached a section titled, "The Unexpected Truth." The words leapt out at him. Vampires and creatures of the night don't need to be invited into your life like in films, but have to have some sort of connection to you in order to do so. His heart raced as he delved deeper into the book, coming to a section labeled Myths. The text dispelled the common beliefs about killing vampires. Crosses, garlic, stake in the heart, and daylight are what we know about killing vampires, but can it be more specific? The answer is yes. Not only will a stake in the heart kill a vampire, but also in the head. Anywhere else and the vampire will return. Garlic and crosses will burn their skin, but in time and a replenish of blood will cure the scar. Daylight will turn a vampire to ashes. Peter snapped the book shut, his mind reeling with the implications of what he had just read. He gazed out the window, lost in thought as the bus rumbled through the city streets. As he walked down the sidewalk, the book clutched in his hand, Peter's eyes drifted to the bookstore window. There, he spotted Lily, engrossed in her own reading. Without hesitation, he pushed open the door, the chime announcing his arrival. Lily, absorbed in her book, greeted him without looking up. "Hello." "Hey, Lily," Peter replied, his voice cutting through the quiet of the store. Lily glanced up, a smile spreading across her face. "Oh, hey, Peter." Peter stepped closer to the counter, his nerves tingling with anticipation. "Hey, I was wondering if you would like to go see a movie with me." Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Sure, I would like that. There's this community theater event in the park tonight. Would that be okay if we checked that out?" "Yeah, of course," Peter agreed, his heart soaring. "I'll stop by after work?" "Yeah, sounds good," Lily confirmed, her smile growing wider. "'Kay, see you then." Peter turned to leave, his steps lighter than when he had entered. "Bye," Lily called after him. Peter paused at the door, his hand resting on the handle. He glanced back, his own smile mirroring hers. "Bye." As he exited the store, the promise of a shared evening with Lily filled him with a warmth that even the dark knowledge contained within the pages of his book could not diminish. In the bustling confines of the travel agency, Peter stood at the counter, facing a man and woman eager to embark on their next adventure. He handed them a stack of glossy brochures, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Here's your brochures," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "Happy traveling." The couple accepted the brochures with grateful nods, their excitement palpable as they turned to leave. Pete sauntered over, his eyebrows raised in appreciation. "Happy traveling? Huh, I like that," he remarked, his tone laced with admiration. Peter shrugged, a hint of pride in his voice. "Yeah, I think it works." "Yeah, it does," Pete agreed, turning to Dominic, who stood at the far end of the counter, engrossed in paperwork. "What do you think, Dad? Happy traveling?" Dominic glanced up, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. "Yeah, I like it." Pete shot Peter a knowing look, his eyebrows dancing with mischief. "You got anything going on tonight?" Peter hesitated, a sudden bashfulness creeping into his demeanor. "I'm going to see a play." "Whoa! Hey! A play! Peter!" Pete exclaimed, his voice dripping with mock surprise. The room erupted in laughter, the guys exchanging amused glances at Peter's unexpected plans. Peter shifted his weight, a sheepish grin spreading across his face. "I'm going with the girl from the bookstore," he clarified. his voice barely audible above the good-natured ribbing. "Whoa!" Pete, Dominic, Angelo, and Luigi chorused in unison, their faces a mixture of surprise and admiration. Dominic's eyes softened, a genuine smile replacing his usual stoic expression. "Peter, good for you." Pete leaned in, his curiosity piqued. "The one from the coffee shop?" Peter nodded, a hint of color rising in his cheeks. "Yeah. Good for you, Peter," Pete repeated, clapping him on the shoulder. The room buzzed with a newfound energy, the guys exchanging knowing glances and nods of approval. Peter stood tall, a sense of anticipation building in his chest as he thought of the evening ahead. The prospect of spending time with the girl from the bookstore, away from the confines of the travel agency and the watchful eyes of his co-workers, filled him with a nervous excitement he had never experienced before. The amphitheater hummed with anticipation as Peter and Lily settled into their seats, the stage before them teeming with performers. Lily had changed into an elegant blouse, her beauty catching Peter's eye as he sat beside her, still clad in his Hawaiian shirt and khakis. The air between them crackled with an unspoken tension, the silence broken only by the murmur of the gathering crowd. "Is this a different shirt from earlier?" Peter asked, his voice barely audible above the din. Lily laughed, a musical sound that sent shivers down Peter's spine. "Yeah. You look very nice," he managed, his words catching in his throat. The house lights dimmed, plunging the theater into darkness. A hush fell over the audience as an elderly woman, disguised as a vampire, limped onto the stage, a basket dangling from her arm. Comic music underscored her movements as the Grim Reaper, a towering figure in black, followed close behind, a skull mask held aloft on a stick. Suddenly, the woman caught sight of her pursuer. The music shifted, growing poignant as she sank to her knees, her hands clasped in silent prayer. She bowed her head, her weariness palpable as she silently implored the Reaper to take her. The Grim Reaper approached, his movements deliberate before abruptly retreating. Laughter rippled through the audience as the old woman sprang to her feet, giving chase. They raced around the stage, a comical dance of pursuer and pursued. The Reaper sought refuge behind a painted tree, the old woman abandoning her pursuit in frustration. As she departed, the Reaper lowered his mask, revealing the face of a man. He yawned, boredom etched into his features as he leaned against the tree, the mask slipping back over his face. A spotlight burst to life, illuminating a stunning mortal woman as she stumbled onto the stage, her confusion and fear palpable. The audience's laughter died away, replaced by a hushed silence as they drank in her beauty. The Grim Reaper's hand shot up in adoration, his skull mask torn away to reveal a face as frightening as it was mesmerizing. The mortal woman recoiled, tears glistening in her eyes. From the shadows, vampire men and women emerged, their faces obscured by skull masks as they formed a menacing horseshoe behind the unsuspecting mortal woman. Peter leaned close to Lily, his whisper barely audible. "What is this play about?" "Vampires," Lily breathed, her eyes never leaving the stage. Peter's eyes widened, a flicker of fear dancing across his face. The mortal woman's voice rang out, a desperate plea. "I don't want to die." She glanced around, panic rising in her chest as the Grim Reaper, his mask discarded, swooned with a love-struck expression. "We are death," he proclaimed, his voice a thunderous echo. Peter raised a hand to his face, shielding his eyes from the unfolding horror. The mortal woman stepped forward, her eyes seeking solace in the audience. "Someone help me, please. What have I done?" The Grim Reaper's voice boomed, his words a chilling reminder. "We all die. Death is the one thing you share with all those here." He gestured to the audience, a sinister invitation. Peter bolted from his seat, his heart pounding as he fled the theater, the echoes of the play's twisted truths ringing in his ears. Peter burst through the amphitheater doors, his lungs screaming for air as he stumbled into the night. Lily raced after him, concern etched into her delicate features. "Peter, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft and soothing. Peter shook his head, his words coming in gasps. "I had to get some air." "Did it scare you?" Lily probed, her hand reaching out to comfort him. Peter's eyes grew distant, his mind transported to a place of grief and loss. The whole death thing with the Grim Reaper? It got me thinking about my dad. It was just a lot. Lily's face fell, realization dawning. "Oh, Peter, I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking. We shouldn't have come. No, hanging out with you is nice," Peter assured her, his voice steadier now. "I didn't know it was going to affect me." He paused, his gaze drifting away. "I think I'm gonna get going." He took a step forward, but Lily's hand caught his arm. "Wait, we can still hang out, can't we?" A flicker of hope ignited in Peter's chest. "Yeah, sure, I'd like that." Lily closed the distance between them, her hands finding purchase on his Hawaiian shirt as she pulled him in for a kiss. The world fell away, the horrors of the play forgotten in the warmth of her embrace. The blare of a car horn shattered the moment, the harsh light of headlights blinding them. Peter squinted, his hand raised to shield his eyes. "Peter! Hey, Peter!" a familiar voice called out. "Who is that?" Peter demanded, his heart racing. "Me, Pete," came the reply, the voice unmistakable now. Peter's brow furrowed. "What are you doing here?" "I need your help," Pete urged, his tone laced with urgency. Lily squeezed Peter's hand, her eyes understanding. "It's okay. Come see me tomorrow, okay?" Peter hesitated, torn between the promise of Lily's company and the insistent call of duty. "You sure?" "Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to finish the play," Lily assured him, her lips brushing against his in a parting kiss. Peter slid into the passenger seat of the waiting car, the door slamming shut behind him as they sped off into the night. "Where are we going?" he asked, his mind still reeling from the evening's events. "The cave," Pete replied, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, the darkness swallowing them whole.